Hey there, and welcome to Connect the Dots Learning Center podcast. I'm Stephanie Wagers, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a seasoned therapist, clinic owner, or just starting out, this podcast is your go to spot for insights, tips, and stories that'll help you connect the dots in your practice. Today, I'm excited to talk with Jessie, globally known as the Sensory SLP. Jessie is a sensory trained speech language pathologist and CEO of Pediatric Therapy Playhouse, a top rated clinic in Los Angeles. She's trained tens of thousands of professionals and families through her international speaking, publications, and inside out sensory communication programs. She's the founder of Therapy Academy, host of Making a Shift for Autistic Kids, and author of the best selling book Ready, Set, Connect, a sensory based approach to accelerate communication in autistic children. If that's not enough, she's also the mom to 4 boys, with the 5th on the way. Welcome, Jessie Ginsburg. I am really excited. I feel like kind of a nerd because I've been geeking out on all your stuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, I sure bust out content a lot like it's my job. So,
Seriously, how do you do it? I
I that's a great question actually, because I know that doing more on social is a lot of people's goals. And anyone who has tried will say it's like a full-time job.
It is. Yes.
And the only way I can do it is because I have such an awesome team. And it is my job to be out there creating trainings and content. And meanwhile, I have amazing people running operations and stuff like that, which is the harder part for me.
Right, right. But you just seem like you just pull it out of, it's everywhere. You're laying on your couch, you're walking, you're doing this.
When the inspiration hits, that's my secret, because I
Mhm.
think that we try to plan our content out like, oh, it's national whatever day, I need to post about this. And to me, it's when the inspiration hits. If you don't hit record in that moment, you're not going to get the same quality of story. So it's just better to
Right.
record it. And then also, if you don't just post it, you're never going to do it. So just
And
rip
it's
off the
never going to be
Band-Aid.
perfect.
Some
Right.
people are going to love it. Some people are always going to hate it. And that's just how it goes.
Yeah. My inspiration always hits in the shower, which is not a good time to record.
That is true. I don't have my kids are younger than yours, so I think I don't get those relaxing showers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're opening the door, coming in the bathroom, right? Yeah. Well, let's just tell me a little bit about your background and where you are today or how you got here.
Yeah, so I own a clinic in Los Angeles. I've had this clinic now. We just hit our 11th year anniversary. I'm a speech
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm a speech language pathologist. Currently, we only have speech. We've had OT in the past as well. And I split my time between running this clinic where we serve anywhere from 2 to 300 kids a week to my online education platform where I train other professionals and families in how to use sensory strategies to build communication. So I was kind of deemed the Sensory SLP, which is my social media handle, which
Yeah.
I did not give myself that title. I just started speaking, writing articles, and then people would have me on for interviews and they would say, how did you become the sensory and SLP? And I would say, I didn't know that's who I was, but I'll take that, I guess, and run with it.
Tell me a little bit about your sensory training.
Yeah. So the very first job I ever got, which was before grad school, I was a speech assistant
Hmm.
and I was in a multidisciplinary clinic. So that was the first time I ever did a co-treat. And I remember it's crazy how you never forget certain sessions with kids.
Yes. Yes.
But I had this kid who would come in, he was 3. He would have an autism diagnosis in this day and age. At that point, it was PDD-NOS.
Yes.
And he would come in and he would open the door, shut the door, open the door, shut the door over for like the first 5 minutes of session. And then he would pretty much play whatever I was interested in. But it was never like he was really into it. I felt like there is potential hidden under there and I just don't know how to get it out of him. And his OT came to me and said, hey, we should try to do a co-treat with this boy. And we took him into the gym and we put him on the swing and she gave him a big push and it's like his eyes lit up.
Yeah.
Completely different kid. So then we were able to work on all of his language goals while he was doing these big movement games and he was so engaged and it was this language I'd never seen from him. So that was kind of my first insight into, wow, this is really important in our job as
Right.
SLPs. So
Right.
basically, I spent the next many years taking every training I possibly could get my hands on, including like full sensory integration training for a year and a half. But the thing is that when you're an SLP and you're taking trainings designed for another profession, 95% of what I learned was very irrelevant for me,
Mhm.
you know, because there, my homework was like, okay, write goals for handwriting,
Yeah.
right?
You're
So
like,
it's like that, no, not gonna, like, that's
yeah,
not for me. I
right.
would do it, obviously, had to. But it was like I was taking these golden nuggets. I might take like an 8-hour course and walk away with one thing that was so powerful that I
Right.
was like, I'm so glad I spent my day doing this because I learned this one thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
over the
it's
years, I just
amazing.
started piecing together everything I learned, hired OTs in my clinic. When I went to create my sensory course then for SLPs, I ended up reaching out to Dr. Winnie Dunn, who any OT listening would
I
know.
was just watching that before I hopped on here. Yeah.
Yeah, so she did a guest lecture in my course, and it was like the most intimidating moment of my life, sending that email to her, asking
Oh
her
my gosh, it would
for
be for
me.
me too.
Yeah, so I was like freaking out. Um, and I was like, okay, well, what is the worst thing that could happen? Like, she doesn't respond. She says, no, I won't meet with you. Because it wasn't to ask her to be part of my course. It was just, I just wanted to talk to her, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was getting a lot of flack about, okay, SLPs can't do this. And I was like,
Sure.
it's silly because we need this. And the thing is that, you know, the reason speech therapists use sensory is going to be different from the reason any other professional uses it. And we all have our reasons and we should all have that training, you know, teachers included, parents included.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, over the last several years, really, it's just been about carving out a space for SLPs to feel like we can do this and we need this.
Yeah. What do you say when you get the flack? Like, does it mainly come from, hopefully not the OT profession, but I know there's like, stay in your own lane. And it's like, we can't stay. It's with pediatrics, you're changing lanes. Yes, you're taking your own perspective and your own mindset and what you were trained in, but you're always going to be dabbling.
Yeah,
It's
no,
impossible
it
not to.
did primarily come from OTs. It was like I had OT friends sending me screenshots like, hey, these people are talking about you
That's bad.
online. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to hear it. La 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 la, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, no, but I think that's my response. Is like we can't do our job without this training. So, and I'm not a proponent of anyone just picking up a kid and being like, let's do this sensory. Like as anything in our professions, we need training in order to ethically use it, right? So it's just
Right.
like I would never schedule one of my therapists to do feeding therapy if they had never learned how to do feeding therapy.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's not like I'm just like, oh, all therapists should willy-nilly start using sensory. It's like that we should put in the time and the energy to educate ourselves in how.
Right. Right. And okay. And you have a book. When did you do your book?
It came out in April, so it was one of those things that I wanted to write for so long. And then I just, okay, you're a business owner, so you'll
Yeah.
appreciate this. You know how they talk about like in your life, you have things that are sometimes urgent and but they're not important, or they're
Yeah.
important but they're not urgent. I forget there's a name of like a quadrant for that.
Yeah. I don't know either, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I was like, this is so important to me, but it's never been urgent.
Mm.
And I was like, this year I'm gonna make it both. And
Wow.
that's how I decided I was just gonna do it. And I sat down. Spent one day every week, and I probably wrote it in like about a 6-week period.
Wow.
And yeah, then I released it in April. It hit like top charts on Amazon within the first couple of days. I was beyond shocked, but, you know, grateful.
That's
And people
crazy.
are continuing to buy it. It's called Ready, Set, Connect. It's really written for professionals, but there's so much in there for parents too. So a lot of
Yeah.
parents are buying it, you know, for their teachers or for their
Hmm.
professionals. But yeah, I'm just grateful that, you know, it's getting out there and kind of
Yeah.
spreading.
Did you publish on Amazon or did you go through like a separate agency?
So I hired a coach that I worked with, and she was kind of like the accountability person for me. And
Mm,
then we just published directly to Amazon.
okay. I'm sure that was a feat. Do you like to write?
I, gosh, that's a hard question. I feel like I, when I'm in a flow state, it's easy.
Yes.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
So
But
it's
you're
not
so
like,
busy. It's not like you can just like, oh, I'm at the coffee shop. I should write now,
yeah,
right?
I have to put in a time block for it. So it's not like, oh, yay, it's my writing time block. But if I sit down and I kind of get into that flow state, and the book is written just how I talk. And that was one of the things that kept me from writing for so long was I felt like I'm a professional. It needs to be written this way. I've written a chapter for a textbook before, and I used to be married to an attorney who like had such a formal way of writing, always told me how my writing was like not acceptable. And I was like, you know what? This book is never gonna be written unless it's written in a way that is easy for me to write and
Mhm.
something I would want to read.
Right. Exactly. People don't want to read textbooks, right?
Yeah. And I kept
Especially
sitting
professionals.
down to
Yeah.
write it, and it kept being, I would be bored, so bored that I'd be like, I can't even write this. It's too boring.
Yeah.
And
Good
then
for
I just
you.
started, yeah. I mean, I really built it around a bunch of stories. So I really thought back to my career and like what were the most transformative moments that I had. And then it really all fell into place because just like that story I told you earlier, you know, you have moments in your career where it changes the
Yeah.
trajectory of what you do. And then there's always like a concept to be learned there too.
Yeah. Right. Right. And then you have the Neuroaffirming Academy. And I just purchased that and have been watching it. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
obviously I'm not a speech pathologist, but I'm like really enjoying it. It's
Oh,
great.
thank you. That was
Yeah.
just kind of like a broader mission to get more accessible neurodiversity affirming trainings out to the world because,
That's
you
awesome.
know, not everyone wants to spend the money for my course or for paying us to come speak, but we're like, what can we do that anyone could literally be like, I have $100. I could spend a year in this
Yeah.
membership.
Well, there's a lot of videos too. How long did that take you?
Uh, Again, I'm more of a chunk and do it kind of person. So, we acted on it once we got the idea, we probably had it out into the world like within a month from then or something.
Wow. Your take action gal.
I just like tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm very coachable.
Yeah, I'm like that too. Just give me a
Yeah.
checklist. I'll get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what does neuroaffirming mean to you?
Yeah, I love that. I just wrote an article for you know, Duna, the stroller company. It's like they're
Yeah.
known for their car seat that turns into a stroller.
Yes.
And they had me write that. And I was like, at first it took me a minute because it's hard to explain things sometimes to people who haven't ever heard those terms before.
Right.
You know, but then ultimately when you break it down, you're thinking neuro, brain, diversity,
Mhm.
differences, affirming, embracing, accepting, right? So it's really
Exactly.
is an easy term to figure out, even though it's a mouthful. But to me, it's really just about accepting people for who they are, accepting their brain differences. And
Mhm.
that's something, you know, specifically when working with autistic kids, is that our goal is not to change the way that their brain works and make them like the neurotypical kids. Our goal is to support them in the way that they learn best, support them in the
Mm.
way that they like to socialize, support them in the way that they like to express their emotions. And being able to say that you embrace that about a child really allows you to kind of open the doors for a therapy plan, which is going to be very supportive for them, as opposed to the
Mhm.
goal being, you know, quote fixing.
Right. What do you do? And maybe you haven't had this happen, but we have is, you have a parent and you're using a neuroaffirming approach, but they really want you to do tasks. Like he needs to be sitting down and doing that task. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I wish I could say that that never happened.
I know.
One of the great things about social media is that now, and this doesn't happen, this is definitely still not the majority of our families, but some of our families come to us knowing that who we are and what type of an approach we use. And I always say they are light years ahead in terms of therapy than the families who come in without any knowledge base, because
Mm,
they come in and we're not spending our time convincing them why they need this and convincing them why what they thought they needed isn't actually what they needed, and that it's okay that their child is autistic. And like that stuff sometimes takes a year for families to really
right.
understand and embrace. And when families already come to us at that starting point, it's like we fly in therapy. So
Mhm,
it's just very dependent on the family. And as you know, some families are ready to hear it, some families aren't.
mhm,
And we try to be really clear from even like before families even start, like from the marketing perspective of
mhm,
what our values are. And then we're constantly reminding them, like when they sign up to be a family at our clinic, they actually get a video where we talk about what our
mhm.
values are and what our therapy looks like. And, you know, it's a lot better to find the families who share those values with you from the
Right.
beginning.
You're on the
It's
same page.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a foolproof system, of course, but I think what we try to do, generally speaking, if you have a family who wants something a very specific way, is we try to pull in one strategy that's affirming. And it could be like sensory, it could be language building, it could be anything, like something about a behavior that's driving the parent crazy that they want help with.
Mhm.
And we try to bring in one strategy that's so easy that the parent has a quick win and they're like, wow, this works.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and oftentimes we want to start at like not even A, we want to start like before A. Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I need to like drown you with all of this information about the foundations, what we do. But in
Mhm,
reality, the best way to get a parent on board is by giving them one thing. It's going to be easy. It's going to change their life. And then they're going to
mhm.
trust you from then on.
100%. I so couldn't agree with you more. I feel like we get to have those magic moments with the kids all the time where we get connection. And if we just leave the parents to the side to watch and don't train them how to get connection, it's not fair. And
Yeah,
when they do,
absolutely.
it's just like, I get goosebumps when I see that the parents' eyes light up when, they get that interaction and love kind of back and forth for the first time. It's amazing.
I know, like when you see a kid say their first word, or you hear them say mama for the first time,
Yeah.
and mom. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
too pregnant and hormonal for this right now, but
Yeah, I know. How would you recommend that therapist makes a mind shift from more of that compliance? Because if you've been in the profession for a while, there's kind of that compliance-based therapy and just getting kids to do tasks to more of an affirming therapy approach
yeah, it's
without kind of that guilt. And what I love about your
yeah.
stuff is there's not like guilt about it. You don't shame people for anything. You're just giving information.
Well, I like to think that, but there's always the person telling me I am, but that's okay. Everything is a projection in life, you know. So I think that first thing is having that conviction that you know what you're doing is right. Because once you have that, you don't care what anyone else says. And when I first started talking about this stuff, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was like I felt like this one person talking about it, and everyone else was chattering about like how horrible I was and how, I'm not
Oh,
doing what I was taught. So and it was really hard because then you feel like you're stuck in this world of like defending yourself, and it's more of
yeah.
that like scarcity mindset, and that prevents you from moving forward. But then I start, talking to autistic friends and colleagues, and once you have that conviction of I know this is right, and you don't care what everyone else is saying or thinking,
Mhm.
that's when you really move forward. You really
Mhm.
have to believe that what you're doing is right. And I think the second part of that is all that this approach is doing. And that's why it's kind of funny, because it's not like, it is revolutionary in a sense that it's not what we're taught, but like it
Right.
really is following your gut. Because
Yes.
any of us who have done compliance-based therapies, I spent a year working one-on-one as a behavioral therapist. You leave at the end of the day feeling like that was not fun. I didn't enjoy
Mhm.
that. I feel like a bad person. I feel like I was making this kid do stuff they hated the whole time. And it's like the difference between walking out of a session like that versus walking
Mhm.
out of a session where you were just prioritizing the child's comfort and
Mhm.
connection with you is just completely different feeling. So I think as long as you're doing what feels good to you, that means that you're on the right path.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, play should be fun, right? For everybody
Mhm.
involved.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about, so I know at our clinic, we're struggling writing goals sometimes, especially around like doing a non-preferred task. And where my thing is, everyone's non-preferred is different. So there's things in life they have to transition to. How do you write your goals differently?
Yeah, this is another one. I mean, I feel really good about the way we do this. And sometimes people might say, like, well, we can't do it that way for whatever reason. But I'm of the mindset that kids need to be having fun to learn. Right. And like, it doesn't need to be our job as speech therapists to like torture kids through activities because, like, oh, well, if you don't answer questions in this setting, then how are you going to answer questions in seventh grade English class in 10 years from now? You know?
Yeah.
So, like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, but they have to be able to do it in quote the real world, you know?
Yeah.
Um, like I don't use visual schedule. I don't create schedules in my therapy, right? Because I don't care what order we do what activity. Like we could target
Hmm.
language no matter what. So to me, I'm like, why use it if I don't need it?
Hmm.
So like we basically stopped writing following directions goals, which is something really common, especially for SLPs
Yeah.
working with little kids, because that's probably
Right.
one of the common goals you write. Because what does it do? It forces a compliance-based activity. We're like, oh, well, we have a goal for two-step directions. That means today we need to work on two-step directions. And
Right.
a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the times it's not a comprehension issue. It's a compliance question. So if a child is so we do take insurance. Almost all of our clients use insurance.
Hmm.
This has never been a problem. So a lot of people are
Okay.
like, but what about insurance?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
And if it ever is, I would just say something like changing your goal to say that the child will demonstrate knowledge of a concept as opposed to like will do the thing.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Because there's like everyone has that moment with your 2-year-old child where you're like, come here right now, and they look dead at you in the eyes and then they run the
No.
other way.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between knowing and doing. Or like including something like during highly motivating activities, something like that that gives you a little leeway. But we
Hmm.
write really, really general goals here. So we write a lot of total communication goals, meaning, the child will communicate in whatever way is comfortable for them, whether that's spoken words, their device, body language, facial expressions, gestures, and how easy is it to report on that goal? I
Right.
do think it's a little different in OT because you guys have a lot more of like, okay, we got to work on the cutting and we got to do
Yeah.
the.
I struggle with that though too. It's like, why are we working on cutting if they're hating to cut? Like, do they need to be able to cut a line? Like maybe someday, but what are the skill sets behind that we can
Yeah.
pull out into like functional play that they like to do? So
Yeah.
that drives me crazy when I see people like forcing someone to cut. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, why do they have to skip?
Yeah. And there's things where you think like you end up with all these goals and then you feel like you have to hit every goal every session or else you're a
Yeah.
terrible therapist and everyone's going to judge you and their parents are going to be like, why are we doing this? right? But it's like, how different would it be if there was like a way to have a broad goal about a child demonstrating different, like, say, skills, and then you know that the child loves Pokemon, and so you're
Mhm.
going to print out Pokemon, and then your cutting activity is going to be cutting out Pokemon and gluing
Right.
Pokemon onto the page, and like feeling like you can do something where you're following their interest as opposed to just doing something just because you have it written
That's
down
the
that you
next
need to.
developmental step. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What do your sensory or what do your speech gems look like?
Our gym.
Yeah. Or your
So,
speech rooms. Yeah. We
um,
just remodeled.
well, we have individual rooms and then we have one gym that we share.
Okay.
But our gym is being redesigned right now. So I'm very, very excited because we just moved into a new clinic space, and we're working with this company called Summit Sensory in Colorado, and they're actually flying out here
Oh,
to
wow.
build out it's a freestanding structure because
Okay.
we're in like this huge building where those weird removable tiles and no
Yes.
wooden beams. So, I'm really excited for that because we're going to have a lot more. But, we had in our old clinic, we had our rock wall and our crash pad and our swings that we used a lot of, and then a lot of movable equipment that we would just bring into our rooms, like the
Mhm.
mini trampoline and the collapsible tunnels and the bean bags and, all the million squishy things. But this new structure is going to it's going to have a slide and everything's removable. So it'll have a
Very
slide. It's
cool.
going to have a million places for swings and hammocks and netting and, ninja rings and all of that. So yeah, we're
And
excited.
it's called Summit. That's who's coming out to. Okay, I'll have to check them out. I'll put it in
Yeah,
the.
so we've like met with them. We've talked to them about our space and what our needs are, and they've sent us 3D renderings, and like the whole thing's been really, really fun because I have survived for the past 10 years with a one freestanding swing hook. So
Gotcha. Yeah, it
yeah,
is daunting. We've gone into the ceiling and then we have another structure that's not. I will never go into the ceiling again.
yeah, yeah.
It's
That's
so
hard.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about ABA a little bit. So we get families that are coming in, they're already getting ABA. What, how can we broach that subject of kind of the differences?
Yeah, we actually just did my partner and I have a weekly live show, and we just did an episode on this, and
Oh, awesome.
today we're talking about what everyone wants to hear about and no one wants to talk about.
Nobody wants to talk about, but we need to talk
Because
about
you're
it.
never going to be right. Doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
And anything you put out into the world, someone's going to say, "Oh, but we don't do it that way anymore."
Mhm.
Those of us are trying to change. There are such thing as neurodiversity affirming ABA therapists. There are such thing as autistic ABA therapists, etc. Um, my opinion and what I say to families is, to me, like, it doesn't matter what kind of therapy you're getting as long as all of your therapies are following the same approach,
Right.
right? So like we've got families who come in, and when they're in, for example, I had this little boy who was in this very, very well-known facility around here in early intervention where every single person had a one-on-one aide. Little 2-year-old person had a one-on-one aide, and it was like a puppet and his puppeteer, hand over hand. The aide would walk behind, each of the aides would walk behind the little 2-year-old, being like their hands. And anytime they drop something, they'd bend them over to pick it up. And when they were putting
Wow.
puzzles in, they were physically picking up their hands to put the pieces in. It
Yeah.
was like no autonomy um at all, right? So that parent then comes here and they want to make progress. And I'm like, well, right now we're in a rowboat and we're trying to go opposite directions.
Mhm.
So when you're going to one therapy and that therapy is labeled work, like a lot of therapists will say, like, okay, we're gonna work today.
Yeah. Time to work now.
Yeah, I hate that.
Uh-huh.
So, like, if kids are used to going in and when they see a speech room or when they see any kind of clinic space, they
Yeah.
think of work, and then they come to me and now they don't trust me, and now they don't think it's going to be fun, and now they're not
Yeah.
going to be receptive to learning because they're not used to therapists being fun people for them. And it's just like way slower. So to me, it's way less about like the type of therapy, and it's more about like, are all of our therapists on board doing the same
Hmm.
thing? And
Hmm.
sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. I can think of so many kids right now that we have that we're just struggling because they're melting down the entire session that we get them.
Mhm.
And, there's no calming or regulating or and going on. They just can't. Everything we do is not working.
Yeah, I have a family now who wanted us to go to their child's like very behavioral preschool and observe. And I was like, great, I would love to, you know? Um, and then the director was like, actually, we'll come to you. And I was like, okay, they probably are like worried about the stories I'm going to share. Because there's always stories
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
come from that. But yeah, it's very, very hard because it's hard for the child, you know, and it's also like I fully acknowledge that it is a massive decision for parents and very, very hard for them. It's not
Hmm.
like it's, oh, okay, we're just not going to do it. It's not that
Hmm.
easy. So, I always acknowledge that too. You know, parents feel very, very overwhelmed with that decision of what type of therapy they should do. And obviously, like funding plays a huge role in that too.
Right. Right. Yeah. If we got as much time as ABA therapists did, be a different world, wouldn't it?
Yeah, then we could actually pay our therapist enough to make them
Right.
happy.
Yeah. No kidding. Do you guys work with kids with ARFID?
We don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so I joke that I'm like a retired feeding therapist. And we've kind of had it in and out, but that's never actually been a specialty area of mine.
Okay. Okay. And I'm sure PDA is something that you're seeing quite a bit of.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely like still learning and
Yes.
talking about it with my partner Chris, who's a high school SLP, and then we talk about
Mhm.
like our children at home, and it's just like really interesting stuff to learn about.
It is interesting and just how we can approach it differently in the nervous system level. And
Mhm.
it's crazy. I wish there was more research out there.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we're just learning, but it does help a lot. I think it just all comes down to, you know, as therapists, one of our biggest goals is to, you know, empower parents, like you were
Mhm.
saying, and help them
Yeah.
become the expert on their own child. And part of parenting is that we are just constantly putting demands on our kids. It's just like our
Yeah.
life. Go brush your teeth. Go get your socks. Go get your shoes. Can you eat already? Like, why are you taking so
Yeah.
long? And it's just constant. So I feel like there's just such a huge tie-in because with parenting, our job is basically like keep getting our kids through the day. And with that comes a lot of demands being placed on them. And when we know that when kids are getting demands placed on them, they are shutting down and they are having a stress response and they're not actually
Mhm.
processing, and it's appearing to be them, you know, acting out intentionally, but in reality, it's just their automatic stress response.
Mhm.
And I think just knowing that helps in the first place, like knowing that a child's not trying to be defiant just to be defiant, that it is coming from like their nervous system shutting down. But also, and this is something Chris and I are working on, you know, is like how we can get better at, you know, using declarative language and just
Yes.
making
Yep.
comments as opposed to like constantly putting on demands and asking
Mhm.
questions.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love teaching parents.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. What do you think, like you have a clinic, but just as a clinic owner, what can we do to make our environment more affirming and just more comfortable for the clients that we see in your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the one thing I'll say, and maybe people don't have this realization until they have kids, not to invalidate the experience of anyone who doesn't. But when you have a kid, you can tell who loves your kid and who thinks your kid is most annoying person on the planet, right? Like whether it's a teacher, like almost all of my kids have been in therapy here at my clinic. Like you can tell when someone like truly loves your kid.
Hmm.
And that's one of our core values in our clinic is, um, you know, we treat your kids like they're our own.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we don't, I think loving a child is the key to a parent's heart, you know? And a lot
100%.
of
Yeah.
times, like as therapists, we meet a family and we get so excited to train the parent that we just like dump on the parent all these things to do.
Hmm.
while ignoring the child, but in reality, just like making that little bit of a switch to show that like I am so obsessed with your kid and
Yeah.
I am so excited to be working with them and
Right.
around them really helps parents to feel more comfortable,
Right. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Trust comes from that relationship, right?
Mhm.
And um, parents don't really care what your skill sets are. They just want to know that you like their kid and that you
Totally.
are a friend or, really are in that relationship with them, that they have
Yeah.
support from you. Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
say that all the time to therapists. Like, it matters more your relationship than whether a kid's making progress. Like, ultimately, what a parent wants for their child is to be surrounded by people who are supporting them.
yes. Yes. Yeah. But we all get kids that maybe rub us the wrong way sometimes, even though they're sweet and we still love them. But yeah.
I know, but
Um,
that is a time for us to look inward,
yes.
because I think that that's what I just had this conversation with my 8-year-old. Like, I got really upset about something. I don't remember what it is, but I like yelled at him about something. And then at night when I was putting him to bed, I was like, I didn't yell at you because you did something wrong. I yelled because I was like at the top of what I could possibly take and stress in a day. And
Mm.
that caused me to not have any more energy
Yes, for
and
you.
react like that. So, it's a conversation about like projecting and how like when people are angry, it's usually coming from like that internal place of
Mhm.
any kind of need as opposed to something a child did wrong. And I think like sometimes we meet kids and they're tricky and then it gets us worked up so quickly that we start doubting ourselves as therapists, whether that's conscious or
Yes.
not. And then it starts getting
Yeah.
projected out onto the kid of like,
Yeah.
oh, well, this kid's just too hard. When in reality, we're like, I don't feel like I'm good enough to
Yeah,
help
right.
this.
Like I can't do this. It's me. I'm the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of like, and I feel like sometimes we feel like we have to perform, right? We have to do something great for the parent and the child. But if we just sit back for a second and watch and listen and just play, it changes the whole trajectory of that treatment session.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know that's really hard as a therapist to get comfortable with the silence and the pausing. And we have a new therapist who just started. I was just training her. And what I say to every therapist when they come on is it's all about just say what's in your head, and set the expectation. And if a parent comes in and they were expecting therapy to look one way and then it looks another, and then they're like, I don't get it. I thought you were going to be at a table, like I like to state the obvious, like, oh, I'm gonna first wait and see what he initiates to do.
Mhm.
So instead of like throwing a bunch of toys at him and overwhelming him, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna follow his
Right.
lead. I'm gonna see what he likes, and it could be anything. It's just like talk about the things that are in your head, and then
Right. So
parents
they
will
know
be
what
like,
you're thinking and
"Oh,
doing. Yeah.
this makes
Yeah.
sense."
We have those same conversations. They can't read your mind and they
Yeah,
don't know what you're doing. So it does look like you're just pushing them on the swing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Like, oh, they're coming for swing therapy.
yeah.
No.
I could
So
have done
what's
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. I know.
yeah.
What's next for you guys?
Well, this next baby.
Yeah.
So, um,
When do you do?
So I'm due beginning of January, but my last baby was 3 weeks early, and the one before that was 2 weeks early. So this is our fifth boy.
Wow.
So probably like December, mid-December, we're thinking. So right now, gosh, there's so much exciting stuff going on, but really, from the business operating standpoint, just trying to get everything to run smoothly so that we can
Hmm.
enjoy this time with the new baby. But I still have like big hopes. I hoping to do a TED Talk in the next year. I'm
Oh,
working
that'd
on
be
writing
amazing.
that. I just feel like my mission is to get this information out there in front of more people. And
Mhm.
have you ever seen the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days by
Yes. Yes.
Okay, when she's like, I want to write about politics and war. And she was like, okay. And the editor was like, okay, maybe a smaller breeze. Maybe you can write about shoes or calories or whatever.
Right.
I feel like I'm right there right now because I'm
Mhm.
trying to work with some like major media outlets to get
Mhm.
more information out about neurodiversity affirming therapy, but it's like they're not ready for me to start there. It's like I have
Yeah.
to start with like, how can you support your autistic kid this Halloween? It's
Right.
like I need to go in slow. So, big vision is just to try to spread more awareness about what we do. And,
Mhm.
we'll get there. Where it's slowly happening.
Yeah, well, for that shift to happen, we have to acknowledge the thinking is wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the information we had. Now we know more information. We just need to use it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, but that's harder for some people than others.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it. I love it. I love what you're putting out there, and I think it's so important. And I will definitely keep sharing all your stuff.
Thank you so much. I
You're
so
welcome.
appreciate you having me.
Yes, it's been awesome. I know you're super busy and you've got things to do this afternoon, but I appreciate you being on here today.
Of course. Very happy to be here. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.